Time for FOMO, Alex Coffey alongside Jenny Horne. Now, Jenny, we started the show talking, of course, about the market itself. The market itself is a little bit weaker, but it's not nearly on its lows for the session. It's been this sort of battle back and forth from some of the weak names that you see. Let's think of Apple, of course, which has been a drag for much of this year, continues to be a drag, down almost 2%. But so much of it is offset by the strength that we continue to see in some of these semiconductor names. And really, when I say that, I really mean AMD and NVIDIA. They've kind of been the banner holders for this space and continue to be just that. You got NVIDIA up 3%. You got AMD, which is a topic of our discussion for FOMO, up 7.4% intraday. I mean, these are like video game numbers that these stocks put up every single day.
I know, and I will say, I almost have semiconductor fatigue because we talk about them so frequently on this show, but also for FOMO specifically, because it seems like they're always ripping higher, always looking at stocks at 52-week highs. But AMD makes a compelling case, 7.5% nearly to the upside today, new 52-week highs, and a name that just continues to surprise, I'd say, to the upside, although you're probably not too surprised if you followed this name pretty closely. Barclays did give a broader note on all things 2025 numbers for the semiconductor space, and they raised their price target on AMD $200 a share from $120 with an overweight rating. Rolling out, again, like I said, 2025 predictions, which feels like a lifetime away, but over their semiconductor and semi-cap equipment stocks, and prefers these names that are now what they said. Of course, this is similar to what we discussed with Western Digital earlier on the show, but what they are calling the second wave of AI intelligence. Now, the target change is part of their now 2024 outlook, but continue to see these trends persist not only in 2024, but also, of course, in 2025. This name, 47 analysts currently cover AMD, 37 have buys, there's 10 holds, there's no underperforms or sells. The average price target right now is around 140, which implies, some slight downside. But if you look at the overall price targets, the lowest is $60 a share, which to me feels ridiculous. Perhaps someone has a really bold claim in terms of the more bearish case on AMD, but the highest is now $200 a share out of Barclays. So this analyst sees all sorts of optimism in this space, and this note today has lifted most of the semiconductor stocks, with the exception being Intel, which is slightly lower on the session, but some nice gains to kick off this short trading week in AMD and NVIDIA.
Yeah, the $60 price target comes from a shop called Freedom Finance. Now, the caveat is it hasn't been updated since May. So at some point, it's just
pay attention.
It's just or maybe they just don't update them that often. It's stale at this point, though. So it of course impacts things like the average price target. But if it hasn't been updated since May, it's going to be looking at, of course, prices that really aren't in play at the same point. Now, this stock is almost 3x off its lows that it made towards the end of 2022. It was down in that $50, $60 range at that time. But it's also back near all-time highs, and we haven't really seen this in AMD. It's never been one that's been threatening all-time highs throughout this recovery that we've seen in the stock. It's there now. It's only $7 off that mark, as it's just off its highs intraday of just over 159. Its all-time high mark, at least on daily trading, is 164.46. That was made back in November of 2021, the end of November of 2021. So like the overall market for quite some time, it had been topped out towards the end of 2021, struggled in 2022, spent 2023 recovering, and we're now back basically where we were 2 years ago at this time. Just for AMD, that's a pretty good place to be, considering it's almost 10x off where it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, no kidding. What a wild ride it has been, just to bring us back to where we once were. But another optimistic note that got today was out of Keybanc, who said demand for semiconductors critical to power AI is rising. No surprise there. They went on to not only give an overweight rating for AMD, but also NVIDIA and Micron, raising their price targets for those three companies, 195 from 170 for AMD, also raising on NVIDIA and Micron. But they said their quarterly supply chain findings were relatively mixed. Broad-based end demand trends remain weak, while as auto and industrial end markets undergo this major inventory destocking. But AI remains strong despite these cross currents. So I would say this is a sentiment that's pretty widely agreed upon at this time, where we're not necessarily seeing the tech space be free of negative catalysts. It does seem like AI is continuing to rip higher and will probably still be pretty widely discussed in 2024 as it was in 2023. So lots of optimism surrounding AMD today, but of course this name is getting the biggest benefit as far as its price, now pacing for its highest close since December of 2021, which is not too shabby for a name that's up about 122% year over year and only off of that 52-week high now by about 1.5%, off of lows by 134%. So FOMO feeling, I would say, is definitely to the upside, Alex, just based on today's price activity alone.
Yeah, and that 52-week high was made this morning. So we're
Right.
off today's high by 1.5%. We're basically at the all-time high now, which is just about $7 higher than the current share price. And of course, for a name that's up $10 today, it shows you that could literally be tomorrow. And it may never get there again. I mean, you just don't know.